Imagine for a moment, there exists a law so powerful, so absolute, that those who are truly awake dare not break it. A law that silently governs the path of self-discovery. Most people have never even heard of it, and yet they break it every single day without knowing the price they're paying. But those who have glimpsed the truth, those who are awake, know better. They understand that crossing this line means betraying the very essence of who they are. So what is this forbidden law? And why does it matter so much to those seeking truth? Carl Jung, the great pioneer of depth psychology, spent his life exploring the hidden dimensions of the human mind. He warned that most of us live under illusions, wearing masks, denying our shadow, running from the unconscious. And in doing so, we break this forbidden law without even realizing it. The result? A life of conflict, confusion, and quiet despair. Think about it. How many choices you make each day are truly your own? How many of your beliefs, desires, even fears were shaped by family, culture, or society? If you look closely, you may find that much of your identity has been borrowed, not born from your deepest truth. This is where the forbidden law comes in. Because the greatest danger, Jung believed, is to live a life that betrays your authentic self. Here's the unsettling part. When you deny your inner truth, it doesn't just disappear. It hides in your unconscious waiting, and eventually it leaks out through projection, anxiety, self-sabotage, or patterns that repeat again and again. The very things you reject in yourself start showing up in the world around you. This is why Jung called the shadow dangerous when ignored, but powerful when faced. Carl Jung often reminded us that what we refuse to face within ourselves never simply disappears. Instead, it sinks deeper, becoming more dangerous the longer it is ignored. To understand the forbidden law, we must look at how the unconscious expresses itself through symbols, dreams, and what Jung called archetypes. These archetypes are ancient patterns of human experience, shared across cultures and time. They are the hero who takes the journey, the lover who longs for union, the sage who seeks wisdom, the trickster who disrupts and exposes hidden truths. They live in stories, myths, and religions, but more importantly, they live within us. When someone refuses to acknowledge these archetypal forces, they end up betraying themselves. The danger is not in the archetypes themselves, but in our denial of them. When the hero is denied, courage withers and fear takes over. When the lover is suppressed, life loses its warmth, leaving emptiness or obsession in its place. The trickster, when ignored, does not vanish. He creates chaos, forcing us to confront what we would rather avoid. This is why Jung insisted that honoring the whole of our psyche is essential. To reject any part of it is to break the forbidden law. If you look at the great myths of the world, you will notice a striking similarity. The dragon the hero must fight is not only an external beast, but also the shadow within. The treasure hidden in the dark cave is not simply gold, but the forgotten self. The wise old man or woman who offers guidance is the archetype of the sage, reminding us of the wisdom already sleeping in our depths. These stories are not just entertainment, they are maps. They show us what happens when the law is broken, and they show us the path to honoring it. But the forbidden law does not apply only to individuals. Jung warned that whole societies fall into chaos when they deny their collective shadow. When nations cannot face their own aggression, fear, or greed, they project it outward, creating enemies to fight and destroy. Wars, persecutions, and divisions often begin with this projection. What we cannot tolerate in ourselves, we condemn in others. This is why Jung feared that the greatest danger to humanity was not external weapons or disasters, but our own refusal to face the darkness within. To break the law on a personal level creates suffering for the self, but to break it collectively can lead to destruction on a massive scale. Now let me ask you, do you ever feel like you've been living a role written by someone else? Do you sense a gap between the mask you wear in public and the person you really are inside? If you do, you've already brushed against this forbidden law. Most people go through life unaware that they are breaking this forbidden law every single day. They silence the voice within, bury their real feelings, and wear a mask that pleases others while betraying themselves. Jung called this mask the persona. It is the face you show to the world, carefully crafted to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid judgment. The persona is not inherently bad. Without it, society itself could not function. But here lies the danger. The more you identify with the mask, the more you forget that it is only a mask. You begin to mistake it for who you really are, and then beneath the surface grows the shadow. The shadow is everything you hide from others, and often even from yourself. It is the fears you deny, the desires you suppress, the parts of your personality you learned were unacceptable. Perhaps as a child, you were told to stop being too sensitive, too wild, or too ambitious. So you pushed those traits into the dark. But here is the secret Jung discovered. The shadow does not vanish simply because it is ignored. It waits. It influences you in hidden ways, shaping your choices, creating reactions you cannot explain, pulling you into the same cycles again and again. Have you ever felt an instant dislike towards someone without really knowing why? Have you ever judged another person harshly for qualities that, if you are honest, also live within you? This is the shadow at work. Jung warned that what we reject in ourselves does not disappear. It is projected outward onto others. This is why so many of our conflicts in relationships and society are really conflicts within. When we condemn what we cannot face in ourselves, we condemn it in others. This is one of the most subtle ways people break the forbidden law. They deny their shadow, and in doing so, they live in perpetual conflict with the world. The awake, however, know the danger. They dare not break this law because they understand that betraying the shadow is betraying themselves. Instead of rejecting what is hidden, they face it. They integrate it. They see that within their fears and flaws are not only wounds, but also potential. Anger, for example, when suppressed, can be destructive. But when understood, it transforms into strength, into the ability to set boundaries and protect what matters. Sensitivity, when shamed, becomes a weakness, but when embraced, it is the gateway to deep empathy and connection. This is the essence of individuation, the journey Jung spoke of, the path toward becoming whole. But facing the shadow is uncomfortable, and this is why most people avoid it. Silence terrifies them. Being alone with their thoughts feels unbearable, so they drown themselves in distractions. Endless scrolling, constant busyness, entertainment that keeps them from ever sitting face to face with themselves. Yet no matter how much they run, the shadow follows. It appears in sudden anxiety, in unexplained sadness, in self-sabotage that ruins opportunities at the very moment success is within reach. The forbidden law cannot be escaped. To deny yourself is to be torn apart from within. Think about the times you have betrayed your own truth, the times you stayed silent when you wanted to speak, the times you agreed when you wanted to say no, the times you played a role for approval while a deeper part of you cried out to be seen. Every time this happens, a fracture is created inside you. Break it enough times, and life begins to feel hollow, no matter how successful you appear on the outside. Jung understood that many people who looked accomplished, even admired, carried a secret emptiness. They had gained the world but lost themselves, and this brings us back to the forbidden law. Those who are truly awake live by it because they understand the cost of breaking it. To betray your authentic self, to suppress your shadow, is to cut yourself off from the very source of life within you. The law is simple. Never turn away from who you truly are. But simple does not mean easy. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to step into the unknown. It requires daring to ask questions that may unravel the identity you have carefully built. Yet those who have walked this path know that it is the only way forward. So I ask you now, do you recognize moments when you have broken this law? Do you see how often you have chosen safety over truth, the mask over authenticity? Write it in the comments. Share one way you feel you've betrayed your true self, because awareness is the first step toward change. And stay with me, because what comes next will reveal the even deeper forces that govern this law, and why honoring it may be the key to a life of freedom, wholeness, and awakening. For the awake, this truth cannot be ignored. They dare not break the law because they see how deep the consequences run. Instead, they take the harder road of facing what others run from. They confront the shadow, listen to the language of dreams, and learn to recognize the archetypes shaping their lives. They know that authenticity comes with risk, sometimes losing approval, sometimes walking away from the comfort of conformity, but they also know that it is the only way to wholeness. Living by this law is not about grand gestures or dramatic revelations. It's about quiet courage, the willingness to be honest when lying would be easier, the willingness to feel grief instead of burying it, the courage to stand apart from the crowd when the crowd betrays the truth. Each small act of integrity honors the self, and in doing so, it strengthens the soul. This path is not free of pain, but it is rich with meaning. Those who honor the law discover that the very parts of themselves they once feared hold the seeds of transformation. Anger becomes the fire of justice, fear becomes the doorway to courage, sorrow becomes the depth of compassion. Nothing within us is wasted once it is faced. Jung's insight was simple yet radical. By embracing all that we are, we become whole. To break the law is to live divided, but to honor it is to awaken fully. So the question turns to you. Have you been rejecting parts of yourself, pretending they do not exist? Or are you ready to face them, to integrate them, to live by the law that protects your wholeness? Comment below and share, because your answer may be the first step toward awakening. When a person finally chooses to honor the forbidden law, the first thing they notice is a shift inside. It may not be dramatic at first. There is no explosion of light or sudden enlightenment. Instead, there is a quiet recognition, a sense of being more at home in one's own skin. Small lies that were once convenient begin to feel unbearable. Roles that once seemed natural begin to feel heavy and false. The individual begins to experience the subtle but undeniable freedom of alignment. To live by the law means to walk each day without betraying yourself, and though this sounds simple, it changes everything. Carl Jung described this as individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is not about becoming perfect or flawless, but about embracing all that you are, light and dark alike. For someone who has lived years wearing masks, this process can feel like shedding layers of skin. It can be painful, even frightening, because each layer represents old attachments. The need to be liked, the fear of being judged, the desire to remain in control. Yet with each layer removed, the core self shines brighter. The forbidden law is not a command from outside, but an invitation from within. Do not abandon yourself, no matter the cost. Of course, there are costs. Friends may no longer recognize you, because you are no longer playing the role they expected. Family may feel uncomfortable when you stop conforming to their unspoken rules. Work environments may resist your honesty, preferring compliance over truth. This is why many people break the law. They find it easier to fit in, to keep the peace, to continue playing a part. But those who are awake know that the cost of betraying the self is far greater. Living inauthentically may win approval, but it robs the soul of vitality. Honoring the law may bring conflict, but it also brings life, and with life comes energy. One of Jung's most important insights was that the psyche seeks wholeness. When we repress parts of ourselves, energy is consumed in maintaining the division. But when we integrate those parts, that energy is released. People who honor the law often describe feeling more creative, more alive, more capable of love and connection. The very traits they once hid become the sources of their strength. The forbidden law is not a limitation. It is the doorway to power. Dreams, too, begin to change. Jung taught that dreams are the voice of the unconscious, guiding us toward balance. When someone breaks the law, their dreams often reveal conflict, fear, and unresolved tension. But as they begin to live authentically, dreams take on a different tone. Symbols of healing, growth, and unity appear. The unconscious begins to collaborate with the conscious mind because the person is no longer at war with themselves. This is why Jung said that the unconscious is not merely a dark pit, but also the source of creativity and renewal. For those who persist on this path, the rewards grow deeper. They discover peace, not because life is free of problems, but because they no longer feel divided within. They experience relationships built on truth rather than performance, bonds that may be fewer in number, but stronger in depth. They find that their work, no matter how ordinary, becomes meaningful when it aligns with who they truly are. Most importantly, they feel connected to something greater, a sense that their life is part of a larger unfolding. Guided by the same archetypal patterns that shape the myths of every culture, this is why the awake dare not break the law. They know that once you taste this wholeness, you cannot return to a life of masks. Once you have seen your shadow and embraced it, you cannot pretend it isn't there. Once you have felt the power of living as your authentic self, compromise becomes unbearable. The forbidden law is not enforced by punishment, it is upheld by truth. Break it and you suffer within. Honor it and you are set free. So I ask you again, are you ready to live without betraying yourself? Are you ready to let go of the masks and step into the wholeness that waits inside you? Comment below with one word that captures your commitment. Because the journey only deepens from here, and the choice you make now will shape the life you are about to live. When the individual finally embraces the path of wholeness, something extraordinary happens, not just within them, but also in the way they relate to the world. Jung believed that the personal journey toward individuation is never only personal. Each step toward authenticity sends ripples outward, influencing relationships, communities, and even collective consciousness. This is why the forbidden law carries so much weight. To honor it is not just to free yourself, but to contribute to the liberation of humanity itself. Think of how often society functions on masks. People hide their true feelings at work. They conceal doubts in relationships. They suppress desires in order to fit into cultural expectations. The result is a world filled with silent frustration, unconscious resentment, and hidden wounds. But when even one person dares to live truthfully, it exposes a possibility that others had forgotten. It gives permission, without words, for others to begin questioning their own masks. Authenticity is contagious. One person's courage can awaken a spark in another, and that spark can spread until entire systems begin to shift. This is where Jung's insight into the collective unconscious becomes so vital. He believed that beneath the personal unconscious lies a deeper layer of the psyche, shared by all humans. It is filled with archetypes, ancient images and patterns that shape our stories, dreams, and experiences. When someone begins to live authentically, they do not simply express their own individuality. They also embody these universal archetypes, and others recognize them instinctively. A person who steps into their wholeness may be seen as a hero, a guide, or even a disruptor. They stir something deep within those around them because they mirror truths that exist in all of us. But the path is never without resistance. The more authentic a person becomes, the more they challenge the status quo. Families may cling to tradition, organizations may prefer obedience, and societies may reward conformity. Those who honor the law must therefore endure misunderstanding, criticism, or even rejection. Yet paradoxically, it is precisely this resistance that strengthens their transformation. Jung believed that tension is necessary for growth, the clash between opposites, the confrontation between shadow and light, the friction between self and society. Without struggle, there is no integration. Without conflict, there is no breakthrough. At this stage, dreams, synchronicities, and inner symbols begin to appear with greater clarity. The unconscious collaborates with the conscious, offering guidance that often feels uncanny. A chance meeting with a stranger, a line from a book, or a dream filled with powerful imagery can feel like direct communication from the deeper self. Jung referred to this as individuation being guided by an inner intelligence, what many traditions might call the soul. This guidance is always available, but it becomes more vivid once a person stops betraying themselves. And something else emerges, a deeper sense of responsibility. To live authentically is not to indulge every impulse or pursue selfish desires. It is to act from a place of truth that considers both self and other. Jung saw individuation as not just self-realization, but also service to the collective. The more whole a person becomes, the more capable they are of contributing meaningfully to the world around them. Their actions stem not from fear or the need for approval, but from alignment with something greater. They become a vessel for wisdom, compassion, and creativity that can benefit others. For those who walk this path, life itself begins to take on a symbolic quality. Every challenge becomes a mythic test, every success a step in the hero's journey. Pain is no longer meaningless suffering, but a teacher that points toward hidden truths. Joy is no longer fleeting pleasure, but a glimpse of alignment with the self. In this way, the world itself transforms, not because it has changed, but because the lens through which it is seen has shifted. The forbidden law is not meant to restrict you. It is meant to awaken you. It reminds you that life cannot truly begin until you stop betraying who you are. To honor the law is to step into a larger story, one that connects you to every human who has ever walked this path of awakening. The journey is not easy, but it is the only one worth taking. And now the question remains, will you be the one who dares to live without compromise, knowing that in doing so you may ignite the light for countless others? As the journey deepens, something remarkable begins to happen. The individual who once felt fragmented and confused starts to recognize that their inner world is not random chaos, but an ordered pattern filled with meaning. Jung believed that within each person lives a set of archetypes, timeless images that shape our instincts, our stories, and our spiritual experiences. These archetypes are not chosen. They are inherited. They dwell in the collective unconscious and emerge through dreams, myths, and symbols that have guided humanity for thousands of years. When you honor the forbidden law and stop betraying yourself, these archetypes awaken, and suddenly life feels like a story with direction rather than a series of accidents. Think about the archetype of the hero. It lives inside everyone, not as a fantasy of glory, but as a deep calling to overcome trials and grow stronger. Every time you face your fears, every time you step into discomfort instead of running from it, you are answering the hero's call. The forbidden law insists that you cannot abandon this call without consequence. Ignore it, and life feels empty. Embrace it, and even your struggles become meaningful. In this way, the hero is not a character in a book. It is a living force within you, guiding your growth. But alongside the hero is the shadow, the archetype we fear most because it contains all we reject. This is the monster the hero must confront, the enemy that always seems to stand in the way. Yet Jung made it clear that the shadow is not simply an enemy to defeat, but a part of the self that must be integrated. To break the forbidden law is to deny the shadow and live in illusion. To honor it is to turn toward the shadow with courage and learn what it has to teach. Every fear, every insecurity, every dark thought is not a curse but a message. When you face it, you reclaim the power hidden inside it. There are other archetypes as well: the wise mentor, the trickster, the lover, the child, the mother, the sage. At different stages of life, different archetypes rise within you, shaping your decisions and the way you see the world. To live inauthentically is to remain unconscious of these forces, pulled by them without understanding. But when you choose the path of individuation, you begin to see them clearly. You realize that the stories of mythology, religion, and even modern films are not distant entertainment, but mirrors of your own psyche. The myths are alive inside you. This realization changes the way you experience spirituality. Jung often said that modern people suffer not from a lack of advancement, but from a loss of meaning. We have technology, science, and endless information, but many still feel hollow because they do not see themselves as part of a greater story. By awakening to archetypes and the collective unconscious, you rediscover that connection. You begin to sense that your struggles mirror universal struggles, that your victories echo victories told in ancient tales. Suddenly, you are not isolated. You are part of the human journey itself, and this is where the forbidden law becomes most profound. To betray yourself is to cut yourself off from this connection. To hide behind masks is to live outside of your own story, playing roles written by others instead of listening to the deeper narrative of your soul. But when you live authentically, you align with the myth that has always been unfolding through you. Your life becomes a sacred text, every experience a symbol, every moment a chance to embody the deeper forces within. This is not easy. It requires a willingness to let go of certainty and step into mystery. It requires listening to dreams, instincts, and synchronicities that the rational mind often dismisses. It demands trust in something larger than the ego, something vast and timeless. But those who dare to follow this path discover that life itself begins to feel enchanted again. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Chance encounters feel guided. Inner struggles become part of a transformation that is both personal and universal. The forbidden law is not a law in the usual sense. It is not imposed from outside, but written into the very structure of the soul. It whispers that you cannot ignore who you are without losing yourself. To live by it is to embrace the archetypes within you, to walk the path of the hero, to confront the shadow, to learn from the mentor, to open to the lover, and to honor the child. To live by it is to step fully into the myth of your own life. And in doing so, you not only heal yourself, but also reconnect to the timeless story of humanity. The final revelation of the forbidden law is perhaps the most difficult to accept, because it demands the ultimate letting go. All along, the journey has been about peeling away layers, confronting shadows, and embracing the hidden aspects of the self. But at the deepest level, Jung suggested something far more radical. The self you cling to, the identity you defend, the story you tell about who you are, none of it is fixed. It is only a temporary construct. The ego insists on saying, "This is me," but the truth is that the real self is far larger, fluid, and beyond anything the mind can fully grasp. This realization can feel both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it dissolves the familiar boundaries of who you thought you were. Liberating because it reveals that you are not trapped within those boundaries at all. You are not only the mask you wear, not only the job you do, not only the history you carry. You are a vast field of consciousness, connected to every human before you and every human yet to come. Jung called this the self, with a capital S, the totality of the psyche, the center that holds together both conscious and unconscious, personal and collective. To discover it is to realize that you were never small, never broken, never truly lost. But here is the paradox. The ego resists this truth with all its strength. The ego wants control, stability, and certainty. It thrives on labels, achievements, and familiar roles. To live by the forbidden law means loosening the grip of the ego and trusting the deeper current of life. It means surrendering the illusion of control and allowing yourself to be guided by something greater than thought. Many people refuse this step because it feels like death, the death of who they believe themselves to be. Yet those who take it discover that it is not death but rebirth. What dies is the false self, and what is born is the limitless self. From this place, life changes forever. Suffering does not disappear, but it no longer feels meaningless. Pain becomes part of the unfolding process, and even loss reveals hidden gifts. Relationships transform because they are no longer built on performance or fear, but on presence and truth. Work becomes more than survival. It becomes expression, contribution, and alignment. Even solitude no longer feels like loneliness because you sense the deeper connection to the collective soul of humanity. Everything that once seemed ordinary begins to pulse with significance. This is why Jung warned that the forbidden law cannot be broken without consequence. To betray the self is to live in illusion, cut off from the vastness of who you are. To honor it is to step into alignment with reality itself. Once you awaken to this truth, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to living behind masks without feeling the weight of falseness pressing down on your soul. The law is not enforced by external punishment. It is written into the very fabric of the psyche. Break it and you fracture yourself. Live by it and you become whole. And now the responsibility falls to you. You have heard the call. You have glimpsed the shadow. You have felt the whisper of the greater self. The question is no longer whether the forbidden law exists. The question is whether you will live by it. Will you continue to cling to the mask, seeking safety in conformity and approval? Or will you dare to step beyond fear and embody the fullness of who you are? If you choose the latter, understand that the path will not be easy. It will demand honesty, courage, and the willingness to lose parts of your old life. But in return, you will gain something far greater: authenticity, freedom, and connection to a reality beyond imagination. Jung believed that life does not truly begin until you find yourself. And now you know what that means. It is not about becoming something new, but about remembering who you have always been. So let this be your turning point. Do not betray yourself, no matter the cost. Live the law, and you will awaken to the life that has been waiting for you all along. Comment below with one word that describes what awakening means to you, because your story is not just your own, it is part of the great story of us all. And in choosing truth, you may inspire someone else to choose it too. That is how the light spreads. That is how the world changes.